After almost a year of silence, a new audio message has been released, purportedly from ISIL leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. In it, followers are urged to attack the West, including its media, and keep fighting in Iraq, Syria and elsewhere. Russia said earlier this year it might have killed Baghdadi in an airstrike on the outskirts of Raqqa, but leaders of the US-led coalition against ISIL had said Baghdadi was probably still alive. The date of the 46-minute recording is not clear, but the speaker said to be Baghdadi appears to refer to recent events, including North Korean threats against Japan and the United States, and the Iraqi Kurdish independence referendum authorized by local leaders, with the audio saying Turkey is afraid of Kurds at its borders. There's also a reference to the recapture 2 months ago of Mosul by US-backed Iraqi forces, which effectively marked the end of the Iraqi half of Baghdadi's so-called caliphate.
Thousands of striking university students march through the centre of Barcelona. They're angry at what they see as an intensifying central government crackdown on Sunday's planned referendum on independence for Catalonia. The march and strike were called by the main student union in the region. We want to put our vote in the ballot boxes, she says. We want to decide the future of our country, so we're going to do it in a peaceful manner so we know what the citizens want. Hundreds of firefighters joined the rally in the centre of the Catalan city. Some here are against the vote. We believe the logic should be to cancel the referendum. They are still in time, and then start an agreement without haste, without prejudice, bias, illegality, and it should be impartial. Security officials meet in Barcelona ahead of Sunday's controversial referendum on independence. They're determined the vote will go ahead as planned, despite concerted opposition from the Spanish government, which has declared it unconstitutional and ordered regional police to take control of voting booths. What's being attempted next Sunday has been declared illegal by the Constitutional Court, and the courts are calling for it not to take place, he says. This is the line in the sand, and we're going to act on it. We're absolutely determined to fulfill this objective. The Catalan regional government plans to declare independence within 48 hours of a yes vote. The commitment of the Catalan government is very clear. He says we want people to be able to vote, but we must also accept we have a police force which must respect what the judges have said. We can't ignore the fact that this order's in place, and we must carry out our obligations without creating bigger problems than the ones we're supposed to avoid. Analysts say a yes vote is likely, given that most of the 40% of Catalans who polls show support independence are expected to cast ballots, while most of those against it are not.
Emmanuel Macron has set out his bold vision for European renewal, saying there were no red lines, only horizons. And whilst his Lithuanian counterpart cautioned against mirages, Angela Merkel said his remarks paved the way for an intense partnership between the two countries. But even as EU leaders talked about moving ever closer, one country was struggling to break free altogether. Britain's Theresa May arrived at an informal get-together in Estonia, hoping to inch closer to a Brexit deal. She'll use the UK's continued cooperation on security as a bargaining chip in complicated negotiations that have all but stalled over the issue of a financial settlement. For now, she's still got a seat at the table, but she'll be hoping for more than crumbs from this latest diplomatic effort.
It's the World
world's most frequented monument, and on Thursday it celebrated its 300 millionth visitor. The Eiffel Tower in Paris opened to the public back in 1889. Now, almost 130 years on, the 324-metre-high structure welcomes around 7 million people each year.
Yes, you've got to have nerves of steel at this altitude, and demands far more work than meets the eye.
Maintaining and repainting the structure is a monumental feat that takes place around once every 7 years.
Wouldn't be Paris without the Eiffel Tower.
Backing independence from Baghdad, but celebrations by Iraqi Kurds after their breakaway referendum have alarmed neighbouring Turkey. It fears the vote will inflame Kurdish separatist tension at home. President Erdogan, hosting Russia's Vladimir Putin, has threatened economic sanctions and a military response against northern Iraq's semi-autonomous Kurdish region, blasting the ballot as illegitimate. During this sensitive period, he said, the Iraqi Kurdish regional government must be prevented from making bigger mistakes. It's very important that the international community takes a stance supporting Iraqi territorial integrity and political unity. Both leaders said they'd continue to work together to address the conflict in Syria, where they've supported opposing sides in the struggle between the Assad government and rebels. President Putin said the de facto conditions needed to end Syria's civil war had now been achieved, paving the way for people to return to peaceful lives. This is a principal issue, important not only for the Syrian people, but for the world as a whole. Russia, Turkey and Iran are cooperating on maintaining de-escalation zones in Syria, but opposition rescue workers there say Russian and Syrian jets have killed at least 150 civilians and injured dozens in a renewed bombing campaign of opposition-held parts of the northwest. Moscow insists it's attacking hardline Islamist militants.
The supply chain, the logistical chain in Puerto Rico is broken. It's not just broken, it is shattered. It is non-existent at this point. There's no doubt that there's no agency in the federal government with more capacity to airlift and transport than the United States military. I mean, this is what they do. If we ask the U.S. military to go halfway around the world and take care of a problem, they have the capacity to do it. They can most certainly do it in a U.S. territory. So again, I mean, I'm not saying it happened in 5 minutes, but they certainly have the capacity and the training to do it. The military are logistical experts. They train constantly how to maintain supply lines, communications, and transport in challenging environments, usually for a battlefield training, but also for natural disasters. They are the best responders to natural disasters on the planet. We need to employ them and give, not just, they're willing to do it, but they need to be given the authority to make those decisions. The aid is arriving, and things are happening, but ultimately they're not happening fast enough, not because of a lack of a will, but because of a lack of capacity. There's just not a clear command structure in place, and there won't be until and not just a clear command structure, there's not a clear execution structure in place, and there won't be until people with logistical capacity are put in charge of the initial response. And every day that goes by that isn't happening, this thing is only going to get worse and harder to address.
Televidente, vamos para un break comercial. Ahora nos está back e deporte.